Welcome everyone to the Committee on Taxation. We're meeting today to have work session on several bills. We'll begin with committee introductions and we'll start with Senator Libby.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Nate Libby, and I proudly represent all of the people of Lewiston in the Maine Senate.
And Senator Pouliot.
Good morning, State Senator Matt Pouliot, and I proudly represent all of the people of Augusta, China, Oakland, Sydney, and Vassboro in the State Senate.
I don't see Representative Bickford yet. Representative Carmichael.
Morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I represent House District 137, which is 22 communities in Hancock, Washington, and Penobscot counties.
And Representative Gramlich.
Good morning. Thank you, Senator. I am Lori Gramlich, and I represent House District 13, which is the lovely seaside community of Old Orchard Beach. I do need to excuse myself. I have a meeting with DEP and some competing priorities. I will be in and out of this meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative Hanley.
Yes, thank you, Senator. Good morning. I'm Jeff Hanley. I represent District 87, which is Pittston, Alna, Wiscasset, and Randolph.
I don't see Representative Kryzak. Representative Matlack.
Good morning. I'm Ann Matlack. I represent House District 92, which includes the communities of Cushing, Thomaston, South Thomaston, St. George, Matinicus, Haven, and the Muscle Ridge Islands. And I'm going to be in the vehicle most of the morning, and I will put myself on mute and turn off the video until I'm needed. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Representative Perry, I think, will be joining us soon, but he's not with us yet. And Representative Sachs.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Melanie Sachs. I'm delighted to represent House District 48, which is Freeport and part of Pownell. Thanks.
And Representative Terry.
Good morning. Mo Terry, representing District 26, the west side of Gorham, and I serve as House Chair.
And I'm Senator Ben Chipman. I serve as Senate Chair and represent Senate District 27, which is part of the City of Portland. Avery Page is our committee clerk, who's also with us today, as well as Julie Jones, our committee analyst. And so we're going to have work sessions on several bills on our schedule. We have one bill left over from yesterday. Wondered maybe we want to start with just to take that up before we dive into the ones on our schedule. And that's LD 1516, sponsored by Senator Pouliot. It's one of the bills we weren't able to get to yesterday because we lost quorum. And did you already explain this one, Julie, yesterday, or should we'll have you walk us through?
I don't think I did. I don't think I explained yesterday.
Yeah, if you can walk us through that, that would be great.
Sure.
Discuss that.
LD 1516 is Senator Pouliot's bill, an act to amend the property tax exemption for persons who are legally blind. The current property tax exemption is a flat $4,000 for persons who are legally blind. What this bill would do is change that from a flat $4,000 to 10% of the just value of residential real estate owned by the resident of the property. There were questions at the public hearing about state reimbursement for this exemption. I thought that it predated the constitutional requirement, and I was right. It goes back to at least 1977, perhaps before. And the reimbursement is only required for new things that the legislature enacts after 1978. So if you change this to 10%, I'm not sure how we approach that in terms of whether this is a new exemption for constitutional purposes or not. There are other potential constitutional concerns. You'll remember Article 9, Section 8 requires that property taxes be assessed equally and according to just value. Changing from a flat amount, with a flat amount, everybody gets $4,000 who's eligible for the exemption. If you change to 10%, obviously it's going to depend upon the value of the property. Each person is going to be getting a different amount. We don't know for sure whether this is permissible or not, whether 10% is equal or whether a flat amount is equal, but I'm guessing it probably needs to be a flat amount based upon previous cases involving different types of issues. So it's at least a concern. I don't know what the answer is. I can't tell you that for sure. And Maine Revenue Services has technical concerns.
Is someone here from Maine Revenue that we could bring in? Maybe they could let us know what the technical concerns are.
Be Mr. Lacey, probably, Avier, if he's here.
Yeah, if we could bring him in, that would be great.
Just promoted him.
Welcome, Mr. Lacy.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, wondering if you could explain what the concerns MRS has with LD 1516.
Certainly. So I think Julie covered a portion of them, but our initial concern was the application date. I think the bill as written had an application date of April 1, 2021, which has obviously come and passed. So it's going to be a little difficult for municipalities to kind of retroactively go back.
We're not hearing you very well, Mr. Lacy. Your
I'm
sound.
sorry. So the initial concern had to do with the application date. I think the application date as written was April 1, 2021. And so obviously it's going to be difficult for municipalities to kind of go back in time and retroact it. So an application date of April 1, 2022 would be suggested. And then the other technical concerns were what Julie raised. A percentage exemption hasn't been implemented that we know of, and so it's unclear how that would be viewed constitutionally. I don't think there's a clear answer, but it's at least a concern that we wanted to raise, that we just don't know how that's going to be viewed by a court constitutionally. What else? This would require, in our opinion, state reimbursement, because it's even though the blind exemption exists currently, an expansion of the exemption would be subject to reimbursement by the state for both at least 50% of the cost, as well as the administrative costs. And we do anticipate that there would be some administrative costs, because this is a new, again, a percentage, it's a new type of exemption. So there'd be some programming costs, et cetera, for municipalities to implement it. So those were the major technical concerns that we had.
Okay, great. Thank you. Is there any questions from members of the committee for Mr. Lacy? Or committee discussion on this bill?
I do.
Yeah, go ahead, Representative Carey.
I actually have a question for Senator Pouliot. I'm wondering what the purpose of this bill is.
Well, this bill was a constituent request, and so I put the bill in at their request. It wasn't like I woke up and was like, "Hey, I we need another exemption." But in looking at it, I mean, it does seem to make sense that it hasn't been revisited for a while, and that's the reason why when we dug into it a little bit, I was like, maybe it is time for an update. But if the committee feels otherwise, I understand. I do think that we only have so much resources to work with, and if we're going to increase the reimbursement to 100% on homestead exemption, that could help these folks as well. So
the reimbursement. Okay. Okay.
But it seems to me that the 10% figure might be more challenging the more we look at it than a flat rate amount. If we were going to have an increase that was incremental over time and somewhat adjusted for inflation, it would seem that the best thing to do would be to just increase the base amount as a percentage, not make it as a percentage of what the value of the home is. Meaning we could say, well, this is going to go up, 3% a year or something. And starting with, the 4,000, your first year would go up 120 and so forth. It just would compound on itself.
And if it's the just value of something, there's a chance that it could go down as well.
True.
Yeah. So I feel like there's merit to definitely looking into it again, looking into the exemption itself, because it has been a while. That being said, we did just go up on the homestead exemption. We just approved another homestead exemption adjustment, you know, in our committee. Who knows where that will go. I think at this time, it doesn't feel like it's solving a problem necessarily. It's just revisiting something that's already in statute. So I think I'm not super supportive of it at the moment, although I do think that there should be some time to look at those rates and see if there shouldn't be an adjustment, you know, based on some other property tax exemptions that we already give.
Right. Well, in fairness to the work that we've been doing, you know, when this was originally put on the books, I don't think the homestead exemption was even, you know, on the table. And so I'm okay with, you know, if we don't move forward with this bill, you know, explaining to my constituent and anyone who asks that's interested that we're moving in a direction of trying to streamline benefits for folks across the board, so that there's more equal distribution of what people get. And we're doing that by way of increasing the homestead exemption, as opposed to having a lot of different pockets. It could be more administratively burdensome.
Representative Sacks.
So I'll take the plunge and say I move ought not to pass.
So we have a motion of ought not to pass made by Representative Sacks. Is there a second?
Okay, I'll second that on my own bill because I think we've made good progress as a committee with our work on homestead exemption. We just got to get Representative Perry on board, but you know, I don't want folks to think that this was just put in. You know, it wasn't just to pacify somebody. It's just we've been doing other work parallel to this, and I think we have good reasoning to say we're on this track over here with regard to the work we're doing on the homestead exemption, as opposed to carving out. The more we carve things out, the more it takes away our ability to get to that 100% on homestead.
Okay. So we've got a motion made by Representative Sacks and seconded by Senator Pouliot. So any further committee discussion on LD 1516? Seeing none, I think we're ready to vote. All those in favor? That appears to be unanimous of all members present. Do you have everything you need, Avery?
Yep.
Okay, great. So we'll close the work session on LD 1516. And I guess we'll start out now with the chart that Julie had sent out for today for our work sessions. And we've got there's a couple of a few income tax bills, LD 1136. We've got LD 1443 and LD 1500.
Also, perhaps you want to include in there 1369 and 1289. 1289 is Representative Perry's bill, which has rates and brackets provision and also a homestead exemption provision.
Yeah. So there's three that are proposing to increase income taxes, and one of them to use some of that money for homestead. So why don't we take those three up together? I mean, I guess we could take up the other one on you're saying 1369. Yeah, 1369. So let's go into work session on LD 1136, 1289, 1369, and LD 1500. Since they're all having to do with income tax, and we'll have Julie kind of walk us through these four bills, and then we can discuss the four of them together.
And I think you also want to include 1443.
Oh, right, 1443. Okay, so that's an income tax bill as well. My apologies. So we'll also go into work session on LD 1443.
Okay. I apologize for not getting the chart out to you until this morning. I thought I had sent it before I left the office yesterday. And when I looked for it this morning, I discovered that I hadn't apparently. So I don't know whether I tried and it didn't work or whether I just assumed I'd done it and hadn't, but I apologize for not getting it to you. It was available at the end of the day yesterday. Anyway, okay, these 5 bills. In a pre-COVID world, I would have tried to put together a chart for you that had each of these kind of side by side, because not only are there these 5 bills, but there are 3 other bills that you've already heard and are scheduled for a work session at another point. Actually, you haven't heard them maybe already. I will mention those as well. LD 1136 is Representative Harnett's bill. It proposes to add a 4th income tax bracket, which would be at the rate of 10.15%. And it would be for single persons for income over $100,000, head of household 150, and married joint 200. If it's okay with you, as I go through and list these, if I just mention the amount for single filers, you can assume in all cases that it's 1.5 times that for head of household and double that for married joint. That is the standard process that we use in order to provide that. For instance, we don't have a marriage penalty. So the married joint is twice what it is for single. So if people get married, they don't lose they don't lose any kind of tax benefit that they would have gotten previously.
Julie, if you wouldn't mind, if you could share the chart on the screen so people are viewing.
Thank you for reminding me.
People are watching us live stream from home, and the audience out there across the state. That'd be great.
Thank you for reminding me. Yes. So LD 1136 goes from current 3 brackets to 4 brackets, with the new bracket being the 10.15% on taxable income over 100, 150, 200 for the various categories. LD 1289, which is Representative Perry's bill, also adds a new income tax bracket at the rate of 7.95%. The top rate is 7.15%. And his brackets would start at $300,000 for individuals, so 300, 450, and 600. And his bill also includes an increase in the homestead property tax exemption by $10,000 a year, increasing to $55,000 in the year 2024. LD 1369 is also relating to rates and brackets, but quite different from the other bills in that it does away with all of the brackets and instead would impose an income tax of a flat 5% on all income, regardless of what an individual's income was, or regardless of, well, I guess it doesn't really matter much whether it's single head of household. Those are all the same anyway, but it would be 5% on all individual tax filers. LD 1443, oops, gets a little bit more complex in that it's establishing, this is Representative Collins' bill, in that it establishes 5 new income tax brackets for $100,000 for persons filing singly, 150, 200. The new single rate brackets and all of these income amounts in the brackets would follow the same pattern of 1.5 for head of household and double for married joint. So the first bracket would be starting at $100,000 at a rate of 9.15%, increasing to 10.15% for income over $250,000, to 11.15% for income over $500,000, to 12.5%, 15%, sorry, for income over 1 million, and 13.15% for income over $10 million. LD 1500, Representative Lookner's bill, would only add one new bracket, increasing to 12.4% for individuals at 200,000 and then 300 and 400, following the usual pattern for heads of households and married joint. So the differences are the number of brackets that are added and what the rates are. So they've pretty much all got different rates. Some of them have similar brackets, but there are differences in all of those things amongst these bills. You also have other bills. LD 495 is represented as Osher's bill. You have heard that one. It was tabled back in March. It added two new brackets, an 8.35% at 50,000 and an 11.5% at 100,000. You have LD 532, which Senator Baldacci's bill, which was also previously heard and tabled back in March, which added one new bracket at 7.9%. And you have one additional bill which has not been heard yet, LD 1677, which is the Speaker's bill, which is scheduled for public hearing on May 18th. And it would, rather than establishing a new bracket, it adopts the idea of a 3% surcharge on income over 200,000 for single, 300 and 400 for the other categories. So there you go.
Okay, great. So maybe you could take the chart down so we could see each other more on the screen, and we can discuss the 5 income tax bills on our schedule for today. Committee discussion. I guess not seeing any. Oh, go ahead, Representative Terry.
I was just gonna, maybe we have a tentative schedule mapped out for the next few weeks. I'm wondering if we should combine all of these. I love Julie's lists. her charts of the differences of all of these things, like make our jobs incredibly easier. If we have time, Julie, to give you to put together a list for us and do all of these bills at this, work them all at the same time, would that be something that you could provide for us?
I can provide that for you. I'm not sure you can give me time.
So altogether, it looks like, am I wrong in thinking that there's 9 bills altogether, 10 bills altogether, including the Speaker's bill?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
8. Okay, I might have some
eight, I think.
I might have some double booked over here. Yeah, I would. It would be my preference to look at them all side by side at the same time. Maybe one of our last work sessions. I'd like to know what everybody else thinks about that.
Yeah, Representative Terry, I would suggest that we hold off on 1136, 1289, 1443, and 1500, as they're all similar to the tabled bills on income tax that we have that would be raising additional revenue and using it for one thing or another, whether it's changing the brackets and lowering the tax on lower income earners or using money for other things. With LD 1369, that's different in that it's not looking to bring in any new revenue, but actually just to lower the income tax to a flat rate. So I kind of see that as a little bit different than these other ones that we have tabled from previous days, and these other 4 that are on the schedule for today. But I'd like to see what other people think as well. I think Senator Pouliot had his hand up first, and then Representative Kryzak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, at the risk of sounding closed-minded, whether we vote on these bills today or tomorrow or next year, I'm not going to be voting in favor of any income tax increases. So I'll let you guys work it out and let me know when you're ready for a no vote on any tax increases. With all due respect, and certainly appreciate the process, and we'll go along for the ride. I know that might sound closed-minded, but without getting into a long diatribe, that's just where I'm going to be at.
I appreciate where you're coming from, Senator Pouliot. Definitely, and Representative Kryzak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's a ditto for me. But the other thing I'd like to point out is there's this concept that if somebody makes more money than other people, then we should tax them more. But correct me if I'm wrong. If you make more money, you're already paying more taxes because you pay a percentage of what you earn. So this idea of, okay, if you make over 100,000, or if you're a joint and you make over 200,000, then you're making too much money, so we should tax you more. You're already taxing them more because it's a percentage based on what they earn. So, all these ideas of we can get more money by going after people that are working hard and making good money. And if you look at history, when I was growing up and working, the $1.25 an hour was minimum wage. Now we're up to $15. So somebody making $100,000 now compared to maybe 50,000 back then is not making a lot of money. So this concept of, okay, you make 100,000, you make 150,000, you make 200,000, we should tax you more. You're already taxing them more. So I have to agree with the senator, and I will be voting no on every one of these bills.
Okay. Thank you for that, Representative Kryzak. Any further discussion? Would anybody like to make a motion on any of these bills? Representative Terry.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to table all of the income tax bills. I'm not going to be able to read through the numbers and make it sound normal. So Julia, if I could leave that to you, that would be great. So we see them all on the same day. So motion to table.
So Representative Terry, I think we'd have to have a motion on each one individually just for process and vote on them. Is that your understanding or no?
If you'd like me to, I'm happy to.
I mean, I've never seen a committee make a motion on multiple bills and just vote on them, but we can do that if you think that's okay. I'm just not clear.
We did that yesterday. We did it yesterday.
Okay, well, let's go for it. So you're making a motion so you're including in your motion LD 1369 as well? So all five or for the four revenue generating bills?
Yeah, no, 1369, you said? Yeah. I think in fairness, it's part of the income tax package, or with changing an income tax bracket. I mean, this is all of these have something to do with changing the way we tax folks. So I think in all fairness, they all should be put together at the same time.
Okay. So we have a motion from Representative Terry to table LD 1136, 1289, 1369, 1443, and LD 1500. Is there a second? Seconded by Representative Sachs. So that's a tabling motion, so we can't discuss that. So we'll now move to a vote on the motion. All those in favor, please signify. So that appears to be unanimous. So did you vote, Representative Collins?
Sorry, Representative Collins, we are voting to table all of the income tax bills so we can look at them all together.
I vote to table the income tax bills so we can look at them all together.
Okay, great. So that's a unanimous of all members present.
Got it. Thank you.
Excellent. So I guess just working down through our list, we've got LD 1140. This is a bill that we voted on, or that the committee voted on last week. There are some members that weren't here, and we were, it's almost under the understanding we voting that day on things, and then there was a motion made to vote on it. So we have that on our schedule. I'm not sure procedurally what we need to do at this point. There's a couple of us, at least I'm aware of, including myself, who didn't vote on it. and like to ask a couple of questions of the department, but it has been voted, so I think we would need a motion to reconsider at this point to be able to ask any questions. Is that your understanding, Representative Terry?
Yep. Yeah. I don't know who has to,
I think it's someone on the prevailing side. It was a unanimous vote, so anybody that was here, I guess, would been voted on it could make the motion to reconsider.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
what was that LD number again, please?
LD 1140. It's on the second bill down on the chart that Julie sent this morning. Representative Perry, did you had your hand up? Yeah, go ahead, Representative Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just going to move reconsideration.
So the motion made to reconsider by Representative Perry, and are you seconding that, Representative Collins?
I second the motion.
Okay. All those in favor of reconsideration, please signify. So it looks like everybody's voting for that, so that's unanimous. So we're now in reconsideration. So I don't know if you need to go through this again, Julie, unless you feel like you should, but I know we discussed this last week. Do you want to just briefly summarize the bill for us?
Sure. I mean, it's a very short bill and I can do it in one sentence. This bill would provide a sales tax exemption for beginning January 1st, 2022 for sales of firearm safety devices, which means a safe or lock box or a trigger or barrel lock. You voted on it previously, and the vote was ought to pass as amended, with the amendment being a fiscal note only. I don't think we've received a fiscal note yet on it, so I'm not sure what that is. But
$70,000. We saw it last session. The fiscal note last session was $70,000.
Okay.
Okay. We got a couple hands up. Senator Pouliot.
I would still support the ought to pass as amended with fiscal note.
I'll second it.
Is that a motion, Representative Senator Pouliot?
Yes, that was a motion, yeah.
Motion. Okay. So the motion.
And I'll second it.
Pouliot of ought to pass is amended, seconded by Representative Kryzak. Go ahead, Representative Perry. Oh, okay. Is there someone here from the department that can speak to this bill?
I have my hand up, Mr. Chair.
Okay, go ahead, Representative Kryzak.
Why are we bringing this bill up again? We already voted on it. It was unanimous of the people that were present. I'm just curious why we're bringing this up again.
Because when this was voted on, which I think was last Wednesday, just the day before, as a committee, we had some discussion about what we were going to be doing on Wednesdays and how we were going to start meeting at 9:30 as a start time. And I believe it was, forget who it was that had asked, Representative Hanley had asked if we'd be voting on anything on Wednesdays. And we said we would not be. And then the very next day, we moved to go right into work session on the bill and voted on it. And some members, including myself, weren't able to ask any questions that we might have had prior to voting. And so I just thought procedurally it made sense to keep it on as a work session. And I guess maybe now would be a good opportunity just to let everybody know so that we're on the same page, that because we're in the last couple of weeks of our work, that at any point, including on Wednesdays, that we might be just scheduled for public hearings, that we could move to a vote at any point and take up bills and have work sessions immediately because of the amount of work on our plate that we need to take care of. So everybody's on the same page that we could be voting at any time, any day of the week, including on Wednesdays.
Follow up, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
I made the motion to move this into work session because we voted on this on the 129th. It was unanimous coming out of committee. It passed the House, it passed the Senate, and it got left on the table. Listening to the testimony, there had been several young people in the past year, because this bill was not passed, that may have not been exposed to guns that, ended up either hurting themselves or dying. If there's no opposition to a bill, then you can move it into a work session, and that's what we did, and it was unanimous. So I just don't understand why this bill is coming back up again.
Well, just, I guess I asked for Kevin because on the schedule for work session, and just to be clear, I support the bill, but as a process, a matter of process, just the day before, another committee member had asked, would we be voting on anything on Wednesdays? Since we're just scheduling public hearings, we've changed our start time to 9:30, and we said, no, we would not. And so just, I thought as a matter of fairness to Representative Hanley and others who were here at the committee meeting at that time, to then go and vote on something when people weren't expecting that we'd be voting on anything, didn't seem to fit quite.
Yeah, didn't work for you.
I have no problem with the bill, and I understand your point. And just so folks know, and some of the new members are aware, that we could go into work session at any time, and we certainly need to do that when we think we have consensus on something in a public hearing to go into work session. We should be doing that. But because we just had that discussion on Tuesday and said we would not be voting on anything on Wednesdays, I felt a little bit strange about that, you know, just having voting on something on a Wednesday. So it's the same thing with like our start time, where we said we're going to start at 9 o'clock, and we had some discussion about starting at 10 o'clock. And then I believe it was Representative Hanley that asked the question on that as well, that if we did decide to change the time or talked about changing the time again to 9 o'clock, would we discuss it as a committee before the change would be made? And we said, yes, we discussed it as a committee. So we brought that discussion back to the committee, and we discussed it again before we changed the time to 9:30. It's just a matter of fairness to everybody on the committee. That's really my intention here, was just to make sure we're being fair with everybody and that we're all on the same page in terms of what we're doing and when we're doing it. That makes sense?
No.
Do you have anything else, Representative Kryzak? Your hand's still up.
No, thank you.
Okay. But just so everybody does know that going forward for the rest of our work this spring, that we could be voting on anything at any time. Is there someone here from the department, Julie, that could just answer 2 questions on this bill that I have?
It's a sales tax bill, so assuming that it's a sales tax related question, that would be Ms. Methout, and she is one of the attendees. So if Avery could promote her, I think she would probably be able to talk to you.
Welcome, Ms. Methout.
Good morning, Senator Chipman.
So I just wanted to ask 2 questions. Does MRS have any technical concerns at all with this bill, or does everything seem okay the way it is?
We do not have any technical concerns. Actually, last year the bill was worked and we helped with the language, so the language is fine with us.
Okay, and we haven't seen the fiscal note on this, but I don't think anything's changed. So is it your understanding that it's still about $70,000 on the fiscal note?
Is Mike, I don't know if Mike Allen is on, but I would assume not much has changed. But that's really a question for Dr. Allen.
Okay. Anybody have any?
He's on his way.
Okay. Hey, Dr. Allen.
Morning. How are you?
I was asking about LD 1140. This is the bill about the sales tax exemption for purchase of firearm safety devices. We heard this bill last session. The fiscal note, I think at that time, was $70,000. And is it your understanding that would be similar or the same this time around, even though we don't have a formal fiscal note yet?
We haven't estimated this year's bill yet, but I would assume it would be in that $70,000 range, especially because of what Judy just said, that the language is the same and shouldn't be much of a change at all.
Okay, great. Any further committee discussion or any concerns or questions anybody has? Not seeing any hands up. So we have a motion on the table of ought to pass as amended. All those in favor? That is unanimous of all members present. You're all set, Avery?
Yep.
Okay, great. So we'll close the work session on LD 1140. And going down our list, we've got 2 bills on local option sales tax. So let's open up the public hearing on LD 1342 as well as LD 1418. And we'll let Julie go through the analysis on these 2 bills.
Pulling the chart up again.
Did you have something, Senator Libby, or you still have your hand up from voting? Oh, okay, great.
LD 1342 is Representative Sylvester's bill. It proposes to permit municipalities to adopt by referendum a local option sales tax of 1% on lodging that is currently subject to the sales tax. The revenue would be distributed 90% to the municipality imposing the tax. 10% would be distributed to the Maine State Housing Authority. The language in the bill says that they would establish a program of property tax relief and rent relief for municipalities using the revenue that they receive. There's no further description of what a program like that would look like, so the details of that are not really available. It provides that the revenue may not be used to reduce or eliminate funding otherwise due to the municipality, for instance, to reduce revenue sharing or other money that the municipality is due from the state. The sponsor proposed a committee amendment in his testimony. It was included with his testimony. I've emailed that to you, and I can also bring it up. And he indicated that it was an oversight in the drafting of the bill, that the bill should have included this language. The language in his amendment would permit the municipality to also impose the tax on other goods, although the term other goods is not defined in his amendment. I'd also mention that the bill title refers to a tax on lodging and other goods to provide funding for tax abatement. Tax abatement is a technical terminology under the property tax law, and there's nothing in this bill that relates technically to abatement. Maine Revenue Services has significant concerns in terms of administrative issues, both on the part of municipalities and Maine Revenue Services, and the cost, and also some potential legal concerns. I should mention, this always comes up in the context of a local option sales tax, whether it violates the provision in the Maine Constitution that says that the legislature may not suspend or surrender the power of taxation. We don't know whether that permits the legislature to authorize municipalities to adopt a local option sales tax. The legislature's never done it, so there's never been a court case, so the law court has never decided that issue. It's out there. The way legislatures in the past have looked at that is to think about whether they want to take that on by trying, and have moved forward based upon their answer to that question. So I'll just throw that all out here. I'm not sure if Representative Sylvester is here and might want to speak to his amendment, or if you want me to bring it up. It is simply one sentence which says that they can do the other goods out. But if they do, if the municipality decides to impose the tax on other goods, it has to be approved by referendum by 60% of the votes. The 1% on lodging just has to be a majority at referendum, but for the other goods, it would need to be a 60% majority.
Okay, great. Thank you for that analysis, Julie. Representative Bickford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My understanding, or the way I read it, is that if we are going to do a sales tax option, it's not going to be an option. Either all municipalities have to do it, because that way the legislature is creating the tax, or none can do it. Now, I'm going to make a motion now on not to pass an LD 1342. We continue to hear about people's rents, about people's property taxes, and now we want to increase tax on these same people. It's just doesn't make sense to me.
Second it.
Julie, I just have a question. So the way that these bills are written, would the state collect the money and then give it back to the cities and towns, and then it would be okay? The cities and towns wouldn't just be collecting the money, right?
There's a motion and a second.
Understood.
Thank you.
The tax would be, the local tax would be collected at the same time as the state sales tax is collected. So retailers in town would know that they have the 5.5% state tax, but they know that they also need to add on if it's 1%, the 1% local option tax. So when they collect, they'd be collecting that amount and they would file it with the state. The state would then identify how many municipalities need to be provided their 1%, and the money would be returned to the municipality, although I haven't spoken about the other bill yet. It just occurred to me. But this bill, for instance, provides that 90% would go to the municipality adopting the 1% local option tax, and 10% of the revenue would go to the housing authority for tax and rent relief programs.
Okay. And then I know we've got a motion on the bill and we're still in discussion about it. Do you want to explain to us LD 1418 as well, since we're also in work session on that?
Yes.
And also want to recognize the sponsor, Representative Sylvester's with us. Maybe you could hear from him when you explain this bill, Julie, in case you have some additional information for the committee.
Should I do mine first, or?
Yeah, go ahead. You can, if you could
Okay.
give us the analysis in LD 1418, which we're also in work session on.
Okay. LD 1418 is Representative Lucchini's bill. It would allow a local option sales tax on meals and lodging. So although the other bill is, so Representative Sylvester's bill is just lodging, this would be, well, it says meals and lodging, but it's the term that's used in statute is not meals, it's prepared food. So it would be prepared food, but not including marijuana products, because some of those are like brownies, so they are prepared food. And short-term lodging, which is what is subject to the sales tax. Again, it would have to be approved by a referendum, and it also would be at the rate of 1%. So it would have to be approved by a municipal referendum specifying the rate. So it could be up to 1% under 1418. It wouldn't have to be 1%, it could be less than that. The revenue under 1418 would go 85% to the municipality imposing the tax. 15% would go into a separate fund, which would be distributed to all municipalities. So even municipalities that not adopt a local option sales tax would get some benefit from the fact that some municipalities did. And again, the same provision as in the other bill, that the revenue must be used as provided in the referendum and may not be used to reduce or eliminate funding otherwise due the municipality under any provisions of law. Maine Revenue Services has the same kinds of concerns as it has under the other bill about administrative time, cost, and potential legal concerns. Oh, under both bills, they did their test. Maine Revenue Services did their testimony on both bills together and indicated on either one of them that the administrative costs could be as much as $5 million.
Okay, great. Thank you, Julie. I'd like to recognize the sponsor of the previous bill we just heard about, which we're also in work session on, and have a motion on the table on Representative Sylvester. If you could explain the amendment that you've offered and any additional information you might have about your bill and how it compares with the other bill.
Yes, thank you. So I thank you for bringing me forward. The amendment is very simple. It just allows a 60% vote on anything else a municipality would wish to tax. What I would like to offer on top of that is that there should also be a $100 cap in the bill, so that the tax could never be more than $100. And that's important, obviously, for large ticket items. You would never want to tax that at a full 1%.
Okay. Can you maybe offer any analysis on the Senator Lucchini's bill and your bill, and maybe what the differences are for folks that are kind of looking at these two bills? I think what Senator Lucchini's bill is essentially the language from the bill you offered in the last session.
It's a bill from the 128th, and so more or less, Senator Lucchini's bill doesn't allow. He has meals and lodging or prepared foods. It doesn't allow for marijuana. The 15% goes back through to all municipalities according to the revenue sharing formula, and which for some towns would be very, very small, particularly at the beginning. Otherwise than that, it collects it the same way. It sends it back the same way as my bill in this session. In this session, this bill, you know, targets lodging as a simple one. I think it might be possible if the committee wants to simplify it, you know, that it's either a 60 or a 50% for everything. I think that's one possibility if that was your desire, but just to just sort of streamline the bill. But the bill allows sort of super vote, the way that it's written right now, of 60% on any other item. And so, for example, if I do not have meals, if a municipality wanted to tax meals, it would be at the 60% rate.
Okay.
And otherwise than that, they're similar bills. Oh, and of course, the money on mine goes to. It's true that the title was titled as tax abatement. It's really tax relief. So that might be an amendment in the title of the bill. But the money, that 10%, would go to help both municipalities be able to apply for tax relief. So if somebody had a tax bill that they were unable to pay, the municipality would be able to get that money from this fund that Maine State Housing would put together. And also to create a program to try to clear the voucher program. And the reason I left the flexibility is that the people at Maine State Housing might need to use it one way in one year and another way in another year. And we wanted to make sure we were helping the most people stay in their home and get into housing and didn't want to put a lot of rules around it so that they couldn't use that money. So they could use it similar to the home fund.
Representative Perry.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's things I like better about each of the bills. But my question's about the fiscal note, up to $5 million. I mean, that sounds like 50 or 60 full-time employees to do this. I'm curious about the $5 million fiscal note, if that would come out of the general fund or if that would come out of the new revenue raised, or if that's been considered.
If that question is for me, I can tell you that in the past that there was a discussion about creating a new computer program, which my understanding was that Maine State Revenues was already in the process of, but I will leave that to your analyst.
So that would be a one-time, not ongoing, a one-time computer cost.
Again, if it's for me, I'll tell you that's what I remember from the 129.
Whoever knows the answer is what I'm asking.
Maybe we could hear from the department to get an answer to that question, Representative Perry.
Yes, thank you, Senator Chipman. The $5 million is a one-time computer cost. Maine Revenue Services is currently undergoing a complete computer upgrade, as you're aware. We have talked to the vendor and asked how much. This local option is not included in the current programs. And so we've asked the vendor how much it would cost to include this option. And there's further discussion that has to happen, but it can be up to $5 million. So it is a one-time cost.
So Ms. Mather, so with the upgrade that's currently happening, so the additional cost to that upgrade to include local option could be as much as 5 million, but it could be
correct
quite a bit less since the upgrade's happening anyway.
Local option is not included in the current program that we contracted for.
Right.
It would be an add-on. And we've asked for a price, and it could be up to $5 million. But of course, it depends upon the complexity of what gets passed. You know, if there's all kinds of, if every municipality could have a different rate, if every municipality could be seasonal, I mean, it becomes much more, it can become very complex to program.
Okay. Go ahead, Representative Bickford, followed by Representative Terry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So 2 questions. One is I'm really having a hard time wrapping my head around, and I need it explained a little bit better. We want to charge a tax in order to give tax relief. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I need that explained. I also need to offer a suggestion and get input back from the sponsor. Wouldn't it make more sense for the state to get rid of any constitutional issues, say we're going to raise lodging tax by 1% and meals tax by 1%, and here's how we're going to spend that additional 1%. wouldn't that take care of the constitutional questions? And why wouldn't you present it in that form?
So are those questions for anybody in particular, Representative Bickford, or is that just your?
For either sponsor, either Representative Sylvester or Representative Lucchini, either one.
Okay. I don't think Senator Lucchini is with us, but Representative Sylvester, would you like to answer those?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Thank you for the question, Representative Bickford. I think that one of the reasons that I targeted the lowest vote threshold on lodging is because I see this as an ability to tax tourists who come into the state. So not to tax our neighbors on goods, like lodging. And it seemed to me sort of poetic that a lodging tax would pay to keep people in their homes. As to the constitutional questions, I have asked, as you can imagine, I've read through an enormous amount of the past discussion on this issue, and including the bills by your colleague, Representative Perry. And the question comes up, when I first put in this bill, I tried to really deal with what I heard was the constitutional issues. And what I was told is it may even be possible right now that a municipality could do this without having a bill from the state. Because, and I understand that there's also folks who believe no, that that's not true. And so I felt like it was important to have a bill authorizing it. There's a long story behind that I've been told by many folks about how that sort of position that it was absolutely forbidden came forward. But I just think that it's important in my mind that home rule includes the ability for municipalities to raise their own revenue, but also to not have a flat tax imposed. And I know, Representative Terry had a very good bill last time, and it's just where we differ on that. And, but that was also a local option, Representative Terry's bill. And so that's why I would support that, if you understand. I just putting a flat tax on everybody is different to me than the people of a municipality deciding to enact a tax. That to me is a very main value. And that's why I keep championing this bill.
Can I follow up, Mr. Chair?
Oh, sure. Go ahead, Representative Bickford.
Thanks. So you're saying that there is some talk that a municipality can do this already, and I'm going to assume and ask you, does that mean that a municipality could say, for a lodging tax, for example, they could add a convention fee rather than a tax, a convention fee or an entertainment fee to an event or to a lodging? Is that where you were thinking?
I think that's what people mean by the end around. If you want to call it that, right? That municipalities could do this without a bill. It just seems to me that since the convention in almost every other major city in the world is to do it as a lodging tax, that seemed to be the cleanest way to do it, rather than having, one way to do it rather than 15 or 30 ways to do it. Seems cleaner to me.
Well, thank you.
Representative Terry. Go ahead, Representative Terry. I'm sorry, Representative Terry.
Yeah.
Here we go. I have a question for Ms. Methot, which pertains to this, but also any kind of legislation going forward. You said that the software company could charge up to $5 million for this add-on to the program.
Correct.
It was my understanding that we were doing this new computer program so we could have add-ons without it costing $5 million or $50,000 per, every time we made some sort of change. I understand that it will cost something. Do you anticipate every time we write new legislation that it will cost up to $5 million to put a new program in place?
I mean, I do not.
I don't mean that facetiously. I
understand.
Yeah.
There is a core program that we have purchased.
Yeah.
Local option is a very unique set of programs. in order to institute them, because if municipalities have options in terms of, seasonality and rates, and they could tax, someone could decide to tax, I don't know, a certain item when another municipality doesn't tax that item. So the programming for local option can get very complicated. It's not something we purchased in the core. I do not believe that every time we pass, normal, regular legislation, that kind of cost is going to be an issue.
Okay. And it is something that I would assume that this company does. I believe they have 33 other states that they do software for, and I'm assuming that some of them also have a local option. So it's probably not just too hard for them. It's just a matter of locking it into the system that we did purchase. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Representative Joe Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I want to take a crack at Representative Bickford's question he asked a little earlier. Seemed confounded by the notion of raising one tax to lower another. But I swear I've heard at least a dozen times just this session in this committee, as recently as last week, and possibly even from Representative Bickford himself, that we should be taxing consumption, that income and other taxes should not be where we go for tax. It should be consumption. And this is simply a consumption tax to try and take the burden off the other taxes that are not discretionary. So it is not a far out of this world notion that we would want to move in the direction that I've heard repeatedly on this committee.
Good. Thank you for that. Any additional committee discussion? So we've got a motion on the table made by Representative Bickford and seconded by Representative Kryzak of ought not to pass. So if you support local option, you wouldn't want to vote for that motion, obviously, but we do have that motion on the table. So we'll, I guess, now move to a vote unless there's any further committee discussion. All those in favor of ought not to pass, please signify.
My apologies. Could you restate that?
So this is a motion of ought not to pass on LD 1342, Representative Sylvester's bill. It's ought not to pass.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So for those in favor of the motion, I have Representatives Carmichael, Bickford, and Kryzak, and Senator Pouliot.
Okay, all those opposed? So it looks like 6 opposed. So that motion fails. So we're still in work session on both LD 1342 and 1418. Any further committee discussion? Senator Libby.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion on LD 1342. And I'm going to offer some suggestions for amendments. So I'll try to speak slowly.
Sure, go ahead, Senator Libby.
Okay, so on LD 1342, page number 1, in section 4, the current bill speaks to a local option sales tax for lodging. And I would like to add a local option sales tax for prepared meals. So that's the first change.
Okay.
The second is I want to confirm with Julie that this bill allows a municipality to collect a local option sales tax of 1%. There's no option to charge a different rate. Is that correct, Julie? 1% or nothing.
Just let me look here and make sure.
Representative Sylvester, the original bill is 1% or nothing, correct? Yeah, he's
Yes,
shaking his
this
head.
bill is 1%. The sales tax is 1%. It doesn't rely for any other amount.
Okay. And then the the funds would remain split as they are in the bill, 90% going to the participating municipality, 10% going to Maine State Housing, so that remains. And then under section 9, acceptance by voters, I'd like to strike the requirement that the vote needs to equal or exceed 20% of the last gubernatorial. So just strike that, and the intent is to have a local option take effect upon a majority vote of the municipality. Just that simple.
Senator Libby, just to clarify, that would be regardless of what the turnout is. So even if there's just 1,000 people that vote, it would still take effect, or because I think the 20% was to get at having a certain turnout, correct?
Correct. I mean, if I was trying to simplify the bill a little bit.
Okay, so that would get rid of the 20% turnout requirement. Okay, go ahead.
Correct, and just whatever the turnout is, that's what the turnout is.
Okay.
And then, sorry, I'm just looking at my notes here. I know we had discussion about the seasonality, and I just wondered if we might leave that piece out for now, given there may be some constitutional questions. And the sponsor had submitted a amendment to us that I believe has a cap on the total amount of tax that may be assessed on an individual to 100. Representative Sylvester, that's included in your sponsor amendment, correct?
That is correct. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And the title changed to make it tax relief rather than tax abatement.
Yeah.
And that $100 to clarify.
So Julia, go ahead.
I'm just going to clarify, is that per purchase? So it's like if they go buy one item, it wouldn't be more than $100, but if they go back the next day and buy another item, it'd still be taxed up to $100, right? Okay.
Well, I am not seeing that provision in Representative Sylvester's amendment. It was my understanding that that was something new that he was suggesting today that was not in the printed version sent out earlier. And I was going, the reason I had raised my hand was because I was going to ask for clarification on what that meant. Usually the way these things have been written in the past is to say that it does not apply to an item, a single item that costs over a certain amount. That's fairly easy to calculate, but if you're talking about the amount that the purchaser is paying, I mean, you can take $100 and figure out what that amount, what the sales price would need to be in order for it to be more than $100 in sales tax. But is that amount only applicable to the 1%, or is it applicable to, at that point, the 6.5%? I'm not sure what is meant by the cap of $100.
Yeah, and as I was mentioning that, I recalled that we had kicked around that idea in past legislatures as it related to local option applying to all taxable sales, where you might get into a very expensive sale and that cap would be important. But given that we're talking about lodging and meals, I guess I'm not sure that we need that $100 cap, and I understand there's some challenges to crafting that. So I guess I would sort of strike my last comment on that and say no on the $100 cap.
Okay. Do you have anything else, Senator Libby, or is that it for now in terms of what you'd offer in the amendment?
No, I think that's a good start. Basically, to sum up, the motion is ought to pass on 1342. It's a simple majority vote by the municipality. It applies to meals and lodging only, and that's the bill. And again, the intent here is to, and Representative Perry spoke to this well, it's to look towards consumption more and supporting the cost of public services. And as we all know, Maine benefits greatly from our tourist economy, and that's really where we're seeking to recoup a little bit of funds to help support the cost of all the services.
Okay. So do you have everything, Julie? Are you clear on what Senator Libby is proposing for an amendment?
I think so, yes. Oops.
Okay. And you have your hand up. You want to say something? No. Ms. Metho, you got your hand up.
I just wanted to point out a couple of things. Thank you, Senator Libby. By adding prepared meals, I just want you to be aware that that's not going to include liquor, because liquor is a separate under the statute. So a restaurant would be charging the extra tax on the meal, but not on the liquor. I just want to make sure that you're aware of that.
The intent of the amendment I've offered is to have this local option sales tax mirror the existing meals tax that's already administered by collectors. So if you're saying that what I've proposed is going to create a problem for the restaurateur, is that what you're suggesting? They'll have
there
to
is an 8% tax on prepared food. And then there is an 8% tax on liquor sold in establishments for on-premises consumption. So if you just say the local option is on prepared food, it's not going to go, it's on the liquor. Those are separate. It's not gonna include any bars. It's not going to include, but it will, prepared food will include things at the grocery store, like a rotisserie chicken. We don't have a meals tax. We have a prepared food tax and we have a liquor tax.
So Senator Libby,
the intent of my amendment is to cover prepared meals.
so you don't want to include drinks that are sold at the restaurant with the meal?
I think based on the legislative history here, I'm trying to match up what we've tried in the past, which I don't recall including liquor, but maybe Representative Sylvester could nod his head.
I've never seen it have liquor.
Okay, so the tax would be on prepared food. And so that would include the food portion of the meal, but not the liquor portion of the meal.
Is that correct, Senator Libby?
Yeah, I don't want folks to get confused here. We're not talking about liquor. We're talking about prepared meals.
Okay, great.
Okay.
So we have several hands up. I think Representative Perry had his hand up first, followed by Representative Sachs, and then Representative Bickford.
Thank you. So my take would be, we would want this to reflect an extra % on a restaurant check, which would include the food and the drink. I've never heard this before, that I think of a meals tax as the entire restaurant check. I had no idea they were separate categories that are the same rate. To have a restaurant check that had $40 in food and $20 in drink with 8% on food, or 9% on food and 8% on drink, sounds like quite a complication and not exactly what I envisioned, but I'm willing to go with the will of the majority of the committee.
Representative Sachs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I just wanted to qualify either for Senator Libby or Representative Sylvester. The second part of Representative Sylvester's proposed bill says if there are other goods, if approved by now per Senator Libby's amendment, the majority of the votes. So regardless of what say they decided for cars in Auburn on Automobile Row. So that 1% local option tax, not that they would ever do this, but just not trying to tweak you, Representative Bickford, but just say they decided to do cars on Automobile Row in Auburn for 1%. There's no cap to that, right? So that's my only question. You had talked about $100 cap. So it's not.
Representative Sachs, are you looking at the bill?
No, I'm talking specific. Yes, I was looking at Representative Sylvester's bill where it said that a municipality can impose a tax on quote, other goods if approved by referendum at 60% of votes. Remember, so my first
Are you
question,
able to
excuse me,
point us to where that, I'm sorry, I'm just asking for clarification so I can follow your line of questioning. Could you show us on the bill where you're referencing?
Sure, I was referencing off of Julie's chart in a conversation, but I can certainly look at the exact language if I can find it in what section.
It was section 4 of, I think, 2303 or something like that, in the amendment that was that allowed the other goods at the 60%. But my understanding, Senator Libby, is that you have struck that by now only having it be 50% vote on meals and prepared foods. And so there would no longer be allowed a 1% tax on any other good under the amendment that was just proposed. The way I'm hearing it, if you're correct, Senator Libby. Is that
right,
correct?
and that was my question. Are you striking that provision of Representative Sylvester's bill?
So Senator Libby, you're striking that, correct? You're just having this apply to lodging and meals?
I think some of the confusion here is that the original bill as printed does not have the other goods provision in it. It is in the proposed committee amendment that Representative Sylvester has submitted. So it is in that typed version that has been called his proposed committee amendment. It is not in the original bill. So if you go to the text of the original bill, you will not find an other goods provision there. So technically, since we're amending the bill, there's nothing to strike. So the question, I guess, for Senator Libby, it sounds to me like he's not including that other goods provision in his amendment.
And that's what I'm trying to clarify.
My motion to amend was based on the bill before us. So the new language in the amendment that was suggested by Representative Sylvester is not included.
So my question to you, Representative Sylvester, is that something that you would like to remain in the bill?
I think that I would bow to the committee on, you're the tax experts. I think that the intention originally was to try to include more towns in an ability to create revenue. But I would leave that to as a discussion of the committee on whether or not you wanted to have that in.
So if I could clarify, so the reason for the provision was, so if you have a town that doesn't have a lot of restaurants or hotels, that they would, if they chose marijuana or whatever it happens to be, that they would be allowed to participate in this local option tax if they wished.
That was the intent.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
If I could just suggest, I think that the point of the amendment that Senator Libby has offered is to make it simple and very clear, and coming out of the committee, this bill would be amended to just be something, much more simpler. Is that your intent, Senator Libby? So not having it just be able to apply to whatever, but just by applying the meals and lodging, it's more clear and simpler and coming out of the gate.
Yes.
Okay. Representative Bickford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess my question is I'm thinking about people that go out and buy Italian sandwiches or things like that. They're going to be paying an extra 1% tax, or, they go to the grocery store and they buy, or they buy a pizza or whatever to feed their kids. They're going to be paying that 1% tax. And I also think about the restaurants and what it's going to cost them to change their computer systems to not charge 8% on everything, but charge 8% on some things as liquor and 9% on others. That's just another cost to business. It's another cost to people that can't afford to go out to eat. They can't afford to stay at hotels, but yet they're still going to be paying this 1% tax, even if they buy an Italian sandwich or a pizza.
Well, Representative Bickford, it would be optional if the town wants to adopt it, and it's also not a necessity to have prepared food. You know, it's not on all food at the grocery store, it's on prepared food that they might buy from the grocery store or any other place. It's, that's the
Yeah,
difference.
it's still, it makes my head spin, Senator. It makes my head totally spin.
Just wondering, Senator Libby, would you be willing to accept as a friendly amendment to include prepared drinks so that it's the whole restaurant bill, as Representative Perry was suggesting, so it's not separated out?
Yes, I would be. And I understand Representative Bickford will come along with us if we make that change. So yeah, I'm good with that change.
Sure. I'll be right there.
If we can add that to the amendment, just so that the entire restaurant bill, should that city or town choose to adopt this, would be have the extra 1% local option on it, whether it's a drink or a food or whatever it is on the bill. You include the prepared drinks as well. Senator Pouliot.
So I appreciate the work being done here, but I'm still a no on tax increases, particularly at this time. I mean, the friggin' restaurant industry is like struggling to get people to even go work for them. I had one guy last week on downtown Hollowell walking down the street, stopped me. He's like, "You still in the legislature?" I said, "Yeah." I'm like, "When are you going to be opening up this new pizza oven place?" He's like, "I literally cannot find anybody to work in the kitchen, and we're offering starting at $19 an hour." So good luck, folks. I mean, this is just craziness in my mind. I think we should just maintain the status quo and try to get people back to work. That's my 2 cents for the day.
Thank you, Senator Pouliot. Ms. Methot, you had your hand up.
Yes, I'd just like to say, to Senator Libby's questions, if you tie the tax to prepared food instead of prepared meals, you will get the whole restaurant bill. Because prepared food is defined as all food and drink sold in an establishment ready for consumption. So you'll get that if you tie it to the prepared food.
So prepared foods as opposed to prepared meals?
Correct.
Is that
Yep.
okay with you, Senator Libby? Yep, nodding his head yes. So that will be the friendly amendment, I guess. Representative Sachs.
Oh, I also,
sorry. Go ahead,
Well,
Ms. Methot.
please continue, Ms. Methot.
I also have a couple of other amendment suggestions. So the program that we are purchasing, sales tax is going to roll out in October of 2022. It's going in 4 different phases. Sales tax is scheduled to roll out in October of 2022. So making this effective January of 2023 would make it much easier to administer. So I would ask that you consider that.
So Senator Libby is nodding his head to that. So that would be part of the friendly amendment, make the implementation the date that Ms. Methot just suggested.
I think there's some language that needs to be built around specifying and identifying the timing and the dates for reporting. We have, standard language that we use when we disperse taxes to other funds. And so some of that needs to be specified, I believe.
Is that something you could work with Julie on, Ms. Methot?
Sure, that's easy enough.
An amendment then is to come back to the committee for review, so maybe you could work with her to get the language right, the timing.
Sure. And I think the application of the bill's provisions to the unorganized territories, I talked to the director of the property tax a little bit about this. I'm not sure how that would work if a community in an unorganized territory held a referendum and wanted to impose this local option. But then the revenues get distributed to the unorganized territories overall. So I think maybe there needs to be a little bit of work done on the unorganized territory portion of this bill.
Do you have any suggestions, or is that something you would want to work with Julie on, or the sponsor maybe?
If Julie wants to put something together and run it by us, we'll be happy to look at it.
Okay. You have anything else, Ms. Methot, or is that it for now?
Let's see. I think that was it.
Okay. Representative Sachs, followed by Senator Libby.
Ms. Methot, what are the maybe unintended or intended consequences of moving the language from prepared meals to prepared food? What does that encapsulate now when it's prepared food?
Okay, so there is no definition of a prepared meal in the sales tax statute, and that's really the issue. I can actually read to you the definition of prepared food. So it includes meals served on and off the premises of the retailer, food and drinks that are prepared by the retailer and ready for consumption.
Judy, we can't hear you unless your mouth is pointed at wherever the microphone is on your computer.
Okay, so prepared food includes meals served on and off the premises of the retailer. So that would include takeout or a catering company. Food and drinks that are prepared by the retailer and ready for consumption without further preparation. So that would include the things at the grocery store, like a rotisserie chicken or the hot food bar at the grocery store. It would also include a bakery, for instance. And then all food and drinks sold by a retailer at a particular retail location, and the sales of food and drinks at that location are prepared by the retailer and account for 75% or more. So that might be a sandwich shop where they sell things that are prepared by them, but they might also sell a bag of chips and some soda. All of that is included in the definition of prepared food. Even though the retailer didn't make the chips and they didn't make the soda, because you're basically buying it together as a meal. Anytime over 75% of what is sold in an establishment is prepared by the retailer, everything in that establishment is taxed at 8%. So those are the things that would be encompassed if you pass it based on prepared food.
Yeah, I have to say I'm less excited. You know, I was prepared to sort of move forward with this when it was lodging, because that is a lot of out of state and it is far less complex to the retailers. I disagree with Senator Pouliot that the reason for the labor shortage is because we might be doing a local option tax. I think that issue is far more complex. But I am concerned, although again, as you've heard me say so many times, municipalities strengthening local control, letting them decide if this is right for them is something that is attractive to me. I'm less excited about the meals and wonder, Senator Libby, why that was included in your amendment.
Go ahead, Senator Libby.
It was an attempt to mesh the two proposals that we had before us, as well as recognizing the fact that among the municipalities that may want to pursue this strategy, some may have just one or two hotels within their borders or no hotels, but may benefit from tourist flow. So, you know, that was the intent of including that. Lodging tax collected in Maine, I think is less than the meals tax, or the prepared, I want to use the right word, prepared food tax. So again, it was, you know, trying to open up the universe of municipalities that may be able to derive some benefit from this policy change.
Thanks, Senator Libby. Yeah, and I support this because it's completely optional. I mean, it doesn't include basic food that people go buy at the grocery store unless it's prepared. So if it's unprepared food and they're just buying, you know, food at the grocery store that's not prepared, it doesn't include any of that. But any prepared food, which is optional, going out to eat, it's definitely optional. Lodging, these are all optional things that people don't need to do. But if they have the money to do that, they obviously can, and they do these things. But a lot of tourists come here in the summertime, and sometimes they just come up and spend the day in Maine and go out to eat and do things and don't stay in any lodging. So we wouldn't get any revenue from that. And as Senator Libby pointed out, there are cities and towns that have restaurants but don't have any lodging or very little lodging at all. So I think it's important to include this so more towns can have the option of participating. And again, that's the key word, option. The whole thing is optional. Senator Libby, did you
Chair,
go ahead.
I did raise my hand for another point, but just wanted to note that whenever you get to me in the queue.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, Representative Perry, you have something?
Well, sure, a lot of this seems messy. If you buy a bag of chips from me in my neighborhood store, you'll pay a 5.5% tax. You buy them with your sandwich at the Subway and you'll pay an 8% tax. But that's these messy details that had to have been dealt with, happened 20 or more years ago. And so we're not changing the way anything's happening already. We're adding 1%. You buy your lobsters at Shaw's and take them home, there's no tax. You have them cook them, there is a tax. It's just the way things have been for 20 years or more now. But, we all know the history of local option in the legislature and the prospect of this being the year something like this happens. But us folks in service centers like Bangor or Augusta or Lewiston, Auburn or Portland have very little opportunity to discuss the issues we face, where we handle all the homeless, where we have all the tax exempt property, where we handle the methadone clinics and the drug issues, and we handle the subsidized housing, and on and on and on. And how in Bangor, we see police officers from rural Maine counties and state police officers bringing people with troubles into our city every day for us to take care of on our property tax payers. What we're talking about is highly exportable. It's largely discretionary. And if we can take a little bit off our property taxpayers who are picking up the tab for so much of the rest of Maine, it would go a long ways to creating some fairness in our communities.
Thank you, Senator Representative Perry, and I appreciate your point about the way that things are done with meals in the state right now, because the state has, as you know, a 5.5% sales tax on things that you sell at your store, and those are taxed at 5.5% for a bag of chips. But if they go to a restaurant, they pay the 8.5% if more than 75% of the sales, as Ms. Melville pointed out, are from the sale of prepared foods. So it's sort of the local option would be on the same items that the state collects that higher 8.5% meals tax from, or prepared foods tax from, and in the city or town that chooses to adopt this would be taxing that extra 1% on those same things. We're using the same definition the state uses for the 5.5% versus the 8.5% in terms of what's charged. So I think it's much cleaner that way. Senator Lib, I'm sorry, Julie, you've had your hand up for a while. You have something for us?
I'm sorry. If there was a brief discussion a little while ago about the possibility of permitting the local option in the unorganized territory. I think that's an awfully complicated thing to think about. As far as I know right now, essentially, there are no municipal governments in the unorganized territory. Either the state or the county covers those municipal functions. It would make the most sense, I guess, that the county would have to do a referendum in the unorganized territory of that county, and it would have to be everywhere in the unorganized territory in that county. But I don't know if they have an obligation to do a referendum in the unorganized territory for any other purpose, whether they've ever done it or how they would go about doing it. Voting places and procedures vary from place to place within the unorganized territory. I'm just not sure that I would be able to describe a way that could work without some more thought being put into it by the people who administer those things, mainly the fiscal administrator of the unorganized territory and the county commissioners who would be responsible.
Maybe we want to just exclude unorganized territory just to make it easier.
Well, it would certainly make it easier to draft an amendment, yes. And
go ahead, Senator Libby.
They could always come back later and say, here's how we'd like to be included too, if they decide they want to, but
yeah, that's a good
I wouldn't
point.
know how to do it.
Senator Libby.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So that was why I was raising my hand, trying to think through that piece a little bit. Say you've got an organized territory that has a lodging establishment. There may be 10 voters in that UT, and 6 of them vote to apply the local option to the one lodging establishment. The revenues collected, that local option revenue would just go to the county. Actually, would go to the state and then back down to the county. And then the counties, that's the county's money because they're the ones that collect and spend tax dollars. So I think if we're trying to focus this new revenue to the host community, the unorganized territory really doesn't make sense here because we can't get that money back to the UT.
Yeah.
And so it's for that reason that I would add another amendment, which just strikes reference to UT, and that this program is available to municipalities only.
Okay. Thank you.
Does it mention the UT?
Does it?
I didn't see it mentioning the UT
It
anywhere.
It is
On,
actually, it
on
only,
page 2, line 11 and 12. That's the part that needs to get struck from the bill. There may be other parts,
oh,
but
2,
that's
11
the one place I saw where UT is mentioned.
Representative Terry, followed by Representative Sachs.
I was just reading the summary myself and it just says municipality. I did not read line 10 and 11 or 11 and 12. So I or whatever line that was. So I would strike that as well.
I think what 11 and 12 are saying is that for the, well, no, you're right. That just doesn't need to be there.
Yeah, just take it out.
Okay. Do you have anything else, Representative Terry?
No, that was it.
Representative Sachs.
Again, I'd really, again, if you'd like to see this move forward, I'd really recommend taking out the prepared foods part and retaining the 60% majority for, or just simple majority if you wish, for the other. So that if a municipality, like you said, if the intent is to bring in all boats, to say to every municipality, here's an option. We're going to just baseline do 1% for lodging because it ties to the home fund and makes a lot of sense because it's trying to target out of state folks. Great. That's fine for a baseline. But then there was this provision within the sponsors bill around if you want to do anything else, prepared foods, you wanted to do marijuana, you wanted to do cars, you wanted to do whatever it is, whatever works for your municipality. That was that option. And I'd really suggest the committee look at that strongly to simplify the bill, retain local control. They know what's best for them. Some may not want to do any of this, and that is perfectly fine. But that's my pitch to the committee.
Well, I mean, I think that it's important that we have something that's simple and easy to understand heading out of the committee. And there's certainly opportunities for amendments on the floor of the House or Senate to make additional changes, but I think keeping it very simple, very clean in terms of what we're allowing the local option on and how much the threshold is for the vote and all of that. I think what Senator Libby's come up with in the amendment makes a lot of sense in terms of what comes out of the committee. I particularly am very supportive of the amendment on prepared food and what we just had on the discussion on that, because I mean, the state of Maine, you know, taxes some food and snacks at 5.5%, but then it has an 8.5% tax on prepared meals and has that definition already in law. And I'd like to tie it to that. I think tying it to that makes a lot of sense for cities and towns to, if they choose to adopt this, it's tied to that definition. If you go to a restaurant, whatever you get at the restaurant, whatever is on the bill, it's subject to that extra 1% if that city or town chooses to do it, not having to break it up versus, you know, prepared food versus the drinks part of the portion of the receipt, having to separate it out and have a different tax rate for different things based on what you order at the restaurant. I think is absolutely, you know, ridiculous way to try to do this. I think it's just much more simpler and easier to administer to keep it tied to the state's definition of prepared foods, as we've just discussed. Representative Terry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just say I feel like Senator Libby has boiled it down to the simplest, clearest, and really meaningfulest version we've seen. When you, I think all other products ought to be left out. That leads to a whole lot of new complications. Everything that's being taxed is well defined in law. We're just changing the percent, the supermajority votes or anything else, or thresholds for votes, putting it off until January 1st, 2023. After the state has a computer. I do feel like this has been boiled down to the clearest, simplest, easiest, and most meaningful version that we could be voting on.
Thank you, Representative Gary. Additional committee discussion. Go ahead, Representative Collins.
Yes, thank you. And excuse me, I had to go testify in some other bills, just getting back. When I'm done speaking here momentarily, I'd like to ask to have the amendment clarified. I just came back in when you were mentioning an amendment. I just personally, from what I heard Representative Sachs and Perry say, a lot of it seemed to sound okay. I don't know all the details. Personally, I do want something that's simple as possible. I think the more complicated it gets, the harder it is to get something that people can understand and vote on. So I do want to say, though, when you're talking about a local option, I like the option part. So if a community wants this, let them do it. If you don't, then why try to prevent another community from doing what they need to do? It's like, I've worked on projects for the state for decades. And I remember one time when I was a staff member in the legislature, we did something to help at Loring Air Force Base to help with jobs in Aroostook County. Now that was something just for a specific part of the state, but everyone in the state legislature supported it because that's what was needed. You didn't hear people in Southern Maine say, well, how come they're getting money to help them? Like, what about us? So I think we need to think in that spirit where state legislators, we're not only looking at our own community, we're looking at the greater good of the state. And if something works that helps the local community and the people there are behind it, then let them do it. And like, I don't understand why anyone would object to another community trying to do what has to happen to deal with issues. In Portland, we have so much we're underfunded for so many things. We don't get federal money or state money for it. We don't have enough money. We need the means to be able to do what we need to do in our community. So I just kind of have that attitude is, if a town wants to do it, let them do it. If you don't, fine, no harm done. It doesn't really impact you. What I would say about the language is, I like the option part. So if a community wants this, I would like them to have the option. If they want to do it seasonally, there might be some further up in the coast, some coastal town, they get tourists for a few months. They may want to do it seasonally. Let them do it then. But for a place like Portland, we have people coming year round. The streets are packed year round in winter time. The streets are, restaurants, bars are packed. I see out of state license plates. So I think that those communities should have the option to choose how they want this implemented within the boundaries of the law that's passed. So like, let them choose if they want it seasonally year round. I didn't hear what you said about if it's only meals or lodging, it can be other things. I mean, I would think that there's so many people coming from all over the world to Portland, and they're doing a lot more than just meals and lodging. So I would want those other areas to be considered as well. So I would like the city to be able to have that option. And so those are just my thoughts, but I want to keep it as simple as possible with the flexibility of the towns to have that final say, which is completely in the spirit with everything else we talk about. Every committee I'm in, it's like, let the town decide that, let the town decide that, local control, let the town decide it. So, well, let the town decide if they want to do it or not. And if Portland or Bar Harbor or Lewiston or Bangor or Fort Kent or whatever want to do it, and that extra 1% or whatever is on, and your town in Somerset or another part of Cumberland County doesn't want to do it, well, you don't have to do it, and no one in your town's going to be charged an extra penny, and it's not going to hurt anyone. So that's what I have to say. And before we vote, just please clarify the amendment so I know what I'm voting on. Thank you.
Great. Yes. So we'll hear from Representative Bickford, and then before we vote, we'll have Julie clarify the amendment so everybody understands before we vote. Go ahead, Representative Bickford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I can't count the number of times that I've heard that the intent of this bill and the other bill is to go after people from out of state. If the intent of the bill is to tax out of staters, how is that not, and I want this explained to me, how is this not unfair taxation? Even though it applies to everyone, the intent of this bill is to go after the out-of-staters, to make them pay additional taxes. That's unfair taxation. No matter how you look at it, it's unfair taxation.
Thank you, Representative Bickford. Any further committee discussion? Looks like everybody's spoken that wants to. So we have a motion on the table, but before we vote, Julie, could you just clarify the amendment at the request of Representative Collins? And I think for the benefit of everybody, so we're clear about what the amendment would do before we vote.
If I could I ask Senator Libby to maybe to repeat the amendment, because my head has kind of been spinning here with what's in and what's out.
Sure.
And
Senator Libby.
if he's able to go through that, it would be helpful to me as well. And I'm sure that he'd be clearer about it. I might confuse you in some points.
Okay, go ahead, Senator Libby, if you can.
Okay, so we are working from LD 1342, the actual bill. And on page 1, we're saying that the local option sales tax will apply to lodging and will apply to prepared meals, which includes
prepared food is the term we use in statute, which is the one that includes liquor.
Prepared
Yeah, no,
food.
we confused the two of them, but I just wanted to make sure we were talking about the prepared. We have no definition in law of prepared food. We only have prepared. No, it's the other way around. There's no definition of law of prepared meals. We do have a definition of prepared food.
Right.
Prepared food, which in a restaurant is the food and the liquor, and in a grocery store, it's the rotisserie chicken. Okay. So that's prepared food, and that's what's defined in statute currently. The next piece is that we're going to strike any reference to the unorganized territory. Really doesn't apply, or there's real no easy way to work this. If the UTs want to come back to us and say we want in and here's how it's going to work, I think we could be open to that. But we're going to strike UT from this bill for now. And then we simplify the acceptance by voters section. That's section 9 of the bill, by simply saying that a majority of legal voters at an election can approve this, and that's it. Strike the thresholds. And so that's the bill.
And the change
and the date of implementation matches with what MRS asked of us, which I think is 2023, first part of 2023.
January, I think, of 2023. And then Julie, you were going to, Ms. Method was going to work with you in terms of the different times of the year that the revenue's collected or something. I can't remember exactly what it was, but something about some technical stuff that she was going to work with you on.
Yeah, the timing and method of how the money gets transferred to the various places that it needs to be transferred to.
So do you have any questions, Julie, for Senator Libby about the amendment? Are you clear on?
We're not including anything about seasonality. The distribution, that 10% distribution is fine the way it is in the bill. Nope, I think I'm okay.
Is there any questions from members of the committee? Clarifying questions about the amendment? Representative Sachs.
Is there any concerns, Julie, about if we strike the UT provision, that could lead to some of the constitutional questions that we've had before, because we're excluding, the whole point of this was that everybody could opt in, and that wasn't unfair because it wasn't the distribution, but by striking the UT, does that lead to any constitutional questions?
I don't think so. It would be pretty obscure. It's hard to imagine how that anyone would ever even bring that case. I mean, I guess I don't know who would have standing to complain that their rights were being violated under these circumstances, but I don't think it's an issue. And if we were talking about property taxes, it would be an issue. But where it's a sales tax, you know, I think if you wanted to limit the option to counties with a population over X million X million, X hundred thousands worth of people that I don't know as that would even involve a constitutional problem. But no, I don't think it's a problem to exclude the UT.
Representative Terry.
I was just going to say, if it's written in the language that municipalities have the option to do this, then the UT is just automatically included or excluded because they are not a municipality.
That's correct.
We're allowing all municipalities, so there's no constitutional issues because we're not restricting it to only certain municipalities. So I think seems like we're probably okay. Any additional questions or committee discussion? We have a motion on, it's been made, ought to pass as amended. I know Senator Libby made the motion. I don't remember who seconded it. Maybe you have that, Avery. Do you have that, Avery?
I don't remember.
Does somebody know who seconded it?
Chipman, can you second it?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Representative Terry. So any further committee discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify. So it looks like we have 7 voting in favor. Is that correct, Avery?
Yes.
Okay, so all those opposed?
Okay, for those opposed, I have Representatives Kryzak, Bickford, Hanley, and Carmichael, and Senator Pouliot.
And the minority report is?
Ought not to pass.
The minority reports ought not to pass. Okay. So that motion carries. So we'll close the work session on LD 1342. We are still in work session on LD 1418. This is the other local option bill from Senator Lucchini. Further committee discussion on this bill. Representative Bickford.
I make a motion on not to pass on LD 1418. Second.
We have a motion made by Representative Bickford, seconded by Representative Kryzak of ought not to pass on LD 1418. Any additional committee discussion on this bill? Do you have something, Senator Pouliot? Your hand's still up. Is that from the vote? Okay. Seeing no further committee discussion, all those in favor of the ought not to pass motion LD 1418, please signify. That appears to be unanimous of all members present. Do you have everything you need, Avery, on that vote?
Yes.
Okay. So that motion carries. So we'll close the work session LD 1418. And looking at our list of bills, I think we have, looks like 2 more bills left to take up. LD 1362. Let's go into work session on that bill. That's Senator Davis sponsored that bill, LD 1362. You can explain the analysis on this, Julie.
Bringing up the chart. (1362) is Senator Davis's bill, an act to excuse certain marketplace sellers and facilitators for failing to collect and remit sales and use taxes on ammunition sales. This would provide essentially an amnesty, I guess, or a forgiveness for marketplace facilitators and sellers that sold ammunition to the residents of this state between July 1st, 2018 and September 1st, 2021, so it would go forward until September, providing that they may not be assessed interest or penalties due to untimely payments if they remit the taxes owed to the state no later than October 31st. So they're forgiven the amount of interest and penalties they would, if they paid the state the sales tax that was owed by October 31st. Maine Revenue Services has concerns. It talked about its voluntary disclosure program. I'm not sure if it applies in this situation, but they're better able to explain to you whether they think, well, how they think that relates to this particular bill. Maine Revenue Services did not have fiscal information in their testimony, but they did say they might have some numbers available for you for the work session. Don't know if they do.
Okay. Could we get the Maine Revenue Services and any information they might have for us today?
I don't know if do you have questions about the fiscal impact or about the voluntary disclosure program?
She said you might have some numbers for us, and then I guess there was also some concerns, about the voluntary disclosure program as well.
I can speak to the voluntary disclosure program. I think Dr. Allen, I'm not sure if he has any fiscal numbers for you. Maine Revenue Services has a voluntary disclosure program whereby if a taxpayer comes forward and says, I have a tax liability, Maine Revenue Services enters into an agreement with them where they would not impose penalties. They would impose, the interest would still be due. Under certain circumstances, there could be a limited look back period. Generally, it's about 3 years where we'd say, we won't look back beyond 3 years since you've come forward. This particular bill is aimed at marketplace facilitators and marketplace sellers. But in terms of the date that they wanted to start at, so remote sellers had to start paying tax as of July 1st, 2018. A remote seller is somebody who sells directly to the customer. Marketplace facilitators began sending tax to Maine in October of 2019. So this particular bill would not include the remote sellers who were subject to the tax as of July 1st of 2018 because of the Wayfair decision. It would affect the marketplace facilitators who were subject to the tax as of October 19 through legislation passed by this committee. I just wanted to make that clear. So if someone was a direct seller of ammunition, meaning they didn't go through a third party, they didn't go through a marketplace facilitator, they would not be covered by this legislation.
Okay, Representative Cherry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Method, so the bill came to us because we were told that it was sort of the probable cause as to why there were so few folks selling ammunition online to the state of Maine. Essentially, it was anecdotal, and I'm wondering if you have any, I like to fix problems, not so much cause problems. So I'm just wondering if you had anybody or multiple marketplace sellers that called and said, we didn't know you had taxes that we needed to collect. Like where is the problem is I guess what I'm asking. Do you have evidence that there's a problem?
So remote sellers, okay, as of July 1st, 2018, had to begin paying tax to the state of Maine. That was a pretty quick turnaround for a lot of people, but it was based on the Wayfair decision. And so those people had to get up and running pretty quickly. We have not had any complaints from marketplace facilitators in terms of complying with our registration requirements.
And you do have some sort of leeway with folks that do call and say, we didn't know that we were supposed to charge this, but we'd like to make amends at this point.
That's through our voluntary disclosure program, correct?
Okay.
A voluntary disclosure does not apply to someone who has been contacted by Maine Revenue Services for an audit. So if you've been contacted by Revenue Services saying that we're going to audit you, you're not eligible for the voluntary disclosure program.
And follow up, Mr. Chair?
Sure, go ahead.
I know you can't tell us who you would have sent one of those notices to, but are you aware of any or a large amount of those notices going out?
To audit notices?
Yes, for ammunition.
Not a
sale?
large not a large number, no. We don't look for certain kinds of industries. We look for people who are required to be registered. It doesn't matter to us what they sell.
Okay. Thank you.
Representative Sachs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And because of also the sponsor and Mr. Trahan from SAM saying that they didn't think this actually was a problem, they didn't know it back in December when they put in the bill, but it, given the fact that there's an amnesty problem, there's already an amnesty program, I'd like to move ought not to pass on this legislation.
Thank you for that. So we have a motion of ought not to pass from Representative Sachs. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Representative Carey. Any further committee discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify. Representative Matlack, we're, I don't know if you can hear us, we're voting, but.
Oh, there she is.
Okay, wasn't sure if she was voting, but she was voting in favor. So do you have everybody?
For those in favor of the ought not to pass motion, I have Senator Chipman, Representatives Terry, Collings, Matlack, Perry, Sachs, and Bickford.
All those opposed?
For those opposed, I have Representatives Kryzak and Hanley and Senator Pouliot.
Okay, what's the minority report?
Ought not to pass.
Well, we just voted ought not to pass.
Ought to pass.
Ought to pass. So
Well,
ought to-
I did.
Is need more coffee an option?
Yes.
You had something, Lee?
It would need to be ought to pass as amended for fiscal note.
Yes.
Okay. Unless you have other changes. Okay.
Nope.
Ought to pass as amended. Fiscal note is the minority report. So that closes the work session on LD 1362. So we have one more bill, I believe, still to take up, and that's LD 1395. This is Representative Connor's bill to suspend the meals and lodging taxes for 12 months after a COVID-19 civil emergency.
Sharing chart. Yes, Representative Connor's bill would provide that essentially, I guess it's a sales tax exemption. It's drafted that way in, well, it's not drafted that way. It's actually unallocated language, but the language in the bill describes it as an exemption from tax for meals and lodging during the COVID-19 pandemic. So what it would provide would be a sales tax exemption, I guess, for prepared food, the statutory term, and lodging during a state of emergency declared by the governor due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and for 1 year after the state of emergency is terminated. Maine Revenue Services has technical concerns.
Mr. Chair.
And indicate revenue impact could be significant.
Great idea, but I vote ought not to pass.
Second.
Second.
That's a motion made. So that's a motion, Senator Pouliot, correct?
Yeah, ought not to pass is the motion.
The motion.
Who was the second? I'm sorry. Who was the second? Terry?
So the motion made by Senator Pouliot, seconded by Representative Terry, ought not to pass on LD 1395. Committee discussion. Go ahead, Representative Kryzak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question. Would that, if we pass that, would that include the local option tax?
No, it wouldn't. It wouldn't. This only goes 1 year. Sorry, Ted.
Let's try Ted. Okay, so seeing no further committee discussion, all those in favor, please signify. That is unanimous of all members present. So we're all set, Avery? Okay, great. So we'll close the work session on LD 1395, which I believe concludes all the work sessions we had for today. Do you have anything for us, Julie? Anything we should know about? Announcements, amendment review?
I have an amendment review for you. It's LD 1132. Let me bring it up for you. This is LD 1132, an act to encourage the renovation of available housing stock. This is the bill that, as drafted, would have created a process for determination of abandonment of property, which would have been required to be handled by the court system. What this bill does is to provide instead an identification process at the municipal level, with the code enforcement officer generally having responsibility for identifying when property was abandoned. It changes the date from September to December. I think because it basically wouldn't be available to be implemented as early as September. And it also changes some language with regard to the role of the State Housing Authority. The bill itself would have required that that the Maine Housing Authority would have to adopt a program for use of the money. What the new language provides down here at the bottom, where it says program to monitor municipal abandoned property, it said that the municipality is required to submit a notice to the State Housing Authority when it determines that property has been abandoned, and that Maine Housing Authority can use that information in any of its existing programs with regard to redevelopment or supporting first-time home buyers and similar programs. So that's the amendment. It also adds a fiscal note, which indicates that minor costs to the Maine State Housing Authority, judicial branch may realize some, the judicial branch may realize some minor reduction of workload and administrative costs associated with the minimal number of cases that will no longer be filed. I think that has to do with our fiscal notes that we do here are incremental. And since the fiscal note on the original bill would have had a cost to the judicial branch, that's indicating that that cost is no longer there, or at least most of it's not longer there. And it indicates that the collection of filing fees may decrease general fund and other dedicated revenue by minor amounts. Again, that there will no longer be any judicial filing fees paid to the state because the court will no longer be involved. Additional costs to Maine State Housing Authority to utilize data and other purposes can be absorbed within existing budgeted resources.
Any questions? We have a few hands up. I think Representative Sachs who's first maybe, and then Senator Pouliot.
I'm so sorry, that was still from the vote. My apologies.
Okay. Representative Kryzak, do you have anything? Maybe that's still from the vote.
Yep, it is. I'm sorry.
Any concerns or questions about this amendment? Or is everybody else set? I don't see any hands up. I think we're all okay with this amendment, Julie.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Is there any other amendments, or is this the only one for today?
That's the only one I've got.
Okay. So is there any additional things we need to talk about, or are we all set for today? Representative Kryzak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just wondering, we tabled quite a few bills yesterday, either 3 or 4. Since we're finishing so early, can we do those today?
Well, I think there were just three, and we did take one of them up, Senator Pouliot's bill on the exemption for those legally blind. And then the other two were about gold and silver. And I believe Representative Fecto was working on an amendment or something and wanted a little bit more time on that. So we thought we'd.
Oh, okay.
He really just wants to be here. He has asked if we can add him to the Tuesday, the 18th schedule. I told him we probably could. But we'll talk about that, Ted. We're gonna kind of adjust the schedule, including that over the next couple of hours. So we'll send that out ASAP with how we're gonna get all this work done.
Okay.
Great. Representative
Hopefully
Bickford.
not on Mondays.
Yeah, God, no.
When are we planning on being done with committee now?
Well, we put in a request to have until I believe the 27th to finish everything, and I think we were approved to the 21st, and then have the option to request that additional week if we need it. And so, you know, I think we have most, if not everything, scheduled out between now and the 27th.
Well, we tabled 5 bills today, Mr. Chair, so I'm concerned that we're pushing stuff off that we shouldn't be pushing off. We should be working on these. We worked a lot of time on one bill today. We could have worked significant time on the others also.
And we will definitely do that, Bruce. We're gonna put
Thank
these
you.
all together and make some adjustments with the other ones where they are now, so we won't overwhelm ourselves, for sure.
Okay. And tomorrow is 9:30, is that correct?
Correct.
I thought that was today, and I'm sorry for being late.
Yeah, we're going to try to meet, continue meeting at 9 o'clock every day except Wednesdays, which is 9:30. Julie, you have your hand up.
Oh, sorry, I'm fine.
Okay. And Representative Kryzak.
Nope, I'm fine too.
Fine. Okay. It looks like we don't have anything else to discuss. So I guess we're all set to adjourn. Is that your understanding as well, Representative Terry?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Great. So we'll adjourn the meeting of the Committee on Taxation. We'll see everyone tomorrow morning at 9:30.